Hello and welcome to another NDIA Georgia's Business Highlighter. I'm your host, DJ Hathaway. I'm the president of Hathaway Tactical Solutions, but today I'm representing the National Defense Industrial Association's Georgia chapter. Our sponsor for this event is DHG, Dixon, Hughes & Goodman, one of the top 20 public accounting firms in the nation with more than 2,000 professionals across the United States. They combine deep experience with a strong commitment to personal service. They draw on their extensive resources to combine comprehensive assurance, tax, and advisory services. Please check them out at dhg.com. Today's business highlighter, we're honored to have KGM Technologies, a Georgia-based company, and our guest, CEO Richard Cope. KGM Technologies is a 07/02 FFL veteran-owned leading-edge technology and manufacturing company. They specialize in developing small arms sound suppressors, advanced weapon systems, material surface and coating technologies, exotic materials, as well as OEM manufacturing. They pride themselves on having a cutting-edge research and development team led by their founder and Chief Technology Officer, Kyle Grubb. KGM CEO Rick Cope is a retired United States Marine officer that has overseen billions of dollars of government contracts throughout his career, and he joins us today, and we're glad to have him here. Welcome, Rick, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Great. It took a little bit to get this going, but I'm glad we got you in here. We've had a chance to talk before. Very exciting things that you folks are doing at KGM, and we're glad to be able to spotlight some of those things today and have a conversation with you. So let's jump right in if you're ready. You're all set to go.
Sure.
All right.
Ready to
go. I'm kind of curious. This just came up on my radar, and I'm sure many people that'll be watching this will feel kind of same way. What was the motivation behind the creation of KGM Technologies?
Well, the old joke, what would happen if you crossed two things? If you took Kyle, who was working on building robots that crawled inside nuclear reactors and welded up pipes and other things while the reactor was operating, and an old Marine like myself who had developed weapon systems and been a rocket scientist and then retired and run technology companies around the world. And if you brought them all both together in the summer of last year, what would happen? And KGM as a result. So Kyle's mother was an amazing technology speaker who worked for me at DARPA, and she introduced me to her son last summer. Met with him, saw what he was trying to do on research and development and suppressors, went and talked to SOCOM, CENTCOM, and my folks in the Pentagon to see if there was really an opportunity, which is what I look for, where technology crosses opportunity, and realized that this hadn't been solved. We're still shooting the same top slide pistol we did in 1911. We're still shooting the same gas blowback rifle that we did in Vietnam. And if you cut apart anybody's suppressor today, it looks exactly like the first one patented in 1911. So the technology that had occurred in the rest of the industries around the world had not come to small arms. And we saw an opportunity to start a technology company that could bring those technologies that work well in other places to small arms and change the way that things are done. So Kyle and I joined forces, started KGM Technologies, moved into a 32,000 square foot building here in Norcross, Georgia, raised some money from friends, and started ramping up the company.
That makes sense, but it's almost an unexpected pairing, if you will. So can you give us some insight into the company's background? How do you take two different worlds, two different cultures that each of you came from, right? How did you get that motivation or take that motivation and that vision that you had and turn it into a reality a year or so later?
Well, what I've always looked for in all the technology companies I've run, from fuel cells to electric vehicles to large displays, is an opportunity where it's been underserved by technology. And here we had a technology guy in Kyle and in myself, and we had an opportunity where technology and development had not been applied to small arms for the military. a place that I knew well, and I had a lot of references for. And we saw that if we took what we knew worked in other places and brought it here, we could create fundamental change. And the market was ready for it. Suppressors have a long time kind of been just an afterthought. But now with hearing, which is one of my problems, and with flash reduction, which is the problem in the first Gulf War where I was with a 4-foot flame coming out of an M60, we have an opportunity to use real science, stoichiometry, and fluid dynamics to create weapon systems that make our guys effective and invisible at nighttime. And I saw an opportunity and an acceptance and willingness on behalf of not just the military, but also police, law enforcement, your guys at the FBI, and other folks to be able to change what they're doing to become more effective, reduce the flash, reduce the hearing damage. And we've talked to folks up at Walter Reed where you actually get bone conduction of the concussion into your brain, causing brain damage if you stay on the range for a long time, and make them more effective and protect them and protect people out in the commercial or civilian world where this really loud bang and boom, while fun for some, actually causes damage.
Yeah, and I'm like you, a direct victim of that. Being a former explosive breacher and being around a lot of explosions over the years, you kind of wonder what those impacts are. And I'm glad to see people like you are taking interest in those things and helping for the long-term health of our soldiers and law enforcement folks. So what sets KGM Technologies apart from others in this space? I mean, how are you different, or are you unique? I mean, you talked about, finding this gap. Is there competition out there for this, or is this really something, a gap that you saw that you're the sole person filling it right now?
Well, it's a gap that we saw that we're the first mover in. And so what we wanted to do is have a diversified company, so we focus on 5 things. So suppressor technology is one. And if you think about suppressors today, we screw them on the end of a barrel. Well, I think the 3 of us are old enough to remember when you used to put the battery in the back of your cell phone. Now it's fully integrated. A real weapon ought to have an integrated suppressor designed from the ground up. The second thing is weapon technology, because what we really want is a 100-grain round at so many feet per second in a specific point impacting the target. How it gets there is open to reimagination. Research and development, because it takes a lot of the R&D to get where we want to go. In my past company, we were getting issued a patent a month. We're developing that same methodology here to design and protect intellectual property that will result in weapon systems unlike what people have seen today. And then you got to make them out of something. And what we're seeing is people are still using the same chrome moly stuff they have had for decades. There's been no research in new materials, new coatings, and new lubrosity coatings so that you can actually make a weapon out of material you didn't think you could and run it dry and have it be more effective and last longer than people thought today. And then OEM manufacturing, because we need to create an industrial base. So we have a contract with another suppressor manufacturer, and this year we've gone from 0 in January to this month of August we'll build 8,000 suppressors. And so we built a robotic manufacturing line where we can run these things through here at high speed and are building a capacity to go up to 20,000 a month or more of suppressors or weapon systems.
All right, so you're doing both then, right? You're looking at integrating it into new weapon systems, but you're also supplying ones for existing weapon systems.
Exactly. No one changes over instantly. There's always a gradual. So you take our suppressors and you go out to sniper teams or other folks, you demonstrate the usefulness of it and how it does what they want. And one of our first things is accuracy. It's not good enough to put first round on target. You need to reduce the flash and reduce the recoil so second and third and fourth shots stay on target without having to go through target acquisition over again. Being able to build those systems and then show them that an integrated weapon system is actually more effective than screwing it on the end, and then wait for those budget cycles, as we all know, to march down through time to make those acquisitions and go through the upgrades.
Okay. How do you think that the cost is going to work with that? So using these new coatings, new materials, is potential to lessen the cost of manufacturing these things, or is it, there may be many reasons why it's been tried and true that they've used the same things over again, and I'm just wondering if that's not because of the cost involved, or if they just haven't transitioned. If it seems to be working fine, they just stuck with it.
There's a lot of what we call a scotoma, or not invented here attitude in the, hang on a minute, sorry about that, bad phone, in the gun industry. And the reason is it's been relatively isolated. There's not a lot of transfer between technology companies in the real world, and we don't see that in the gun industry. If you work for a gun company, it's unlikely you're going to get a job at Lockheed or Boeing or Martin Marietta. And if you work for one of those guys, it's unlikely you're going to go to work for a gun company. So the technology transfer and knowledge movement between technology areas and spaces hasn't really occurred in the entire gun industry. And the U.S. government hasn't funded a lot of research and development in small arms. They've been looking at the commercial market and just following along behind. The new 6.8's the first time they spent a lot of money on that, and even that's kind of doubt about how they're going to be able to move that forward with small arms. And so we see an opportunity there to reduce cost or hold costs the same but expand or extend lifetimes of machine guns or other high-rep weapons, or make it lighter, or be able to make it so that carbon doesn't adhere, you actually have a weapon that never needs to be cleaned, or one that has a coating that resists salt and corrosion so that you can operate it in the maritime environment where Marines spend a lot of time in the sun and the salt, and be able to operate perfectly without a lot of maintenance and preventive maintenance that you need today.
Yeah, the two things I keyed in from my time out there carrying that you just said was not having to clean it all the time and making it lighter. As we know, on the battlefield, everything is about having great technology and having it light as you wear it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so interesting. So if you would like to dive into some more of those products, anything more you want to talk about suppressor technology? I know we can kind of gave it a gloss over, but if you'd like to dig into it a little bit more and tell us what you're doing with it that's different.
We think suppressors have been looked at inappropriately. It's generally, everyone thinks about sound reduction. We think we have 4 key attributes for a suppressor. Number 1 is accuracy. It needs to maintain host gun accuracy or increase it. Ours does. Number 2, for combat effectiveness, it needs to eliminate flash and flame. So when you're standing there at night, we've all seen it in the movies, and the guys have been out there, is you're always shooting at the other guy's flash. If we can eliminate that, and we do, you're now invisible at nighttime. Number 3 is recoil reduction, so you not only is first round on target, but second and third round stay on target. Or if you build an automatic weapon, you reduce decline so that you keep that trace of rounds on target. And then number 4 is sound modulation or reduction in 2 ways. One, to the ear of the shooter, so that you protect their hearing and their brain housing group from the effect of what you're doing. And the second is to modulate the sound down range so that the people you're shooting at don't perceive this as a weapon anymore, by changing the frequency of the sound or the tone of the sound. And when you bring those 4 together, you can have one of our guys putting rounds down range, and he's invisible to the other guys, and they can't figure out what it is, but their friends are all dropping dead around him.
Great. What about advanced weapon systems that you had brought up? Is that predominantly going down the road of, like you said, fully integrating suppressors into the weapon systems and actually creating new weapon systems?
And not only doing that, but then changing the way the weapon systems are designed so that you minimize the recoil back to the shooter. The idea is, can you have a weapon system all the way up to 50 cal and 20 millimeter where the operator can stay on target and you don't see the bodily impact you do now from the higher power weapon systems. And that's, if they can build a mass dampening for a skyscraper to protect it from earthquakes, why can't we do similar things in weapon systems so you could essentially put it on a dock, pull one trigger with a finger, and it never moves? And if you design it right, there's the ability to do that with materials, science, dampening, and other technologies that are used in other places but haven't been brought into the weapon system world. And then make it out of different materials so it's lighter, more effective, longer lasting, needs to be cleaned, and can be deployed more efficiently in all the environments from the salt and the sand and the sun to the powdery deserts of Afghanistan and other places where it's like talcum powder getting into everything clinging to the oil.
Great. So tell us a little bit about your research and development capability here, because that sounds pretty interesting. It sounds like you found a home run hitter in Kyle that you've joined up with. So give us some background on that.
So we think research and development is a key part to getting to where we want to go. If you can reimagine the goal, and the goal is to have a round downrange impact a target with so many foot-pounds of force, how do you get it there? And I've built already in my past life at DARPA, Mach 5 rail guns where we're using electricity to push a round downrange. And so do we need powder? Do we need it the right way? Does it need to be a caseless cartridge? How do you essentially get that round stabilized downrange where you want it to be? And what are the ways you can play with and tinker with to be able to change that happen, the way that works? Can you change the bolt mechanism? Can you change the way it reflexes? Can you change the way it loads? Those are all things that operate today as a function of material science, but if we start changing the material science, we can change the way a lot of those things happen. And nowadays, especially with the 6-8 work with the Army, people are more open to thinking about a broader expanse than just brass case rounds going downrange.
Interesting. And your material sciences?
Material science feeds into that. We've got currently we've got a CRADA with SOCOM and Lawrence Livermore National Lab to look at, using their supercomputer, how do you look at the surface properties and suppressors? How do you change the surface property of a piece of metal so that although tool steel might be great because it's great for stamping metal for your cars and other places, it rusts very readily. So how do you change the surface morphology on the atomic scale so that it won't corrode in highly corrosive environments? How do you then be able to put coatings on top of it that will atomically adhere to it, that creates an extraordinarily slick surface, many times more slick than what we're familiar with Teflon? And then how do you create atomic properties on the surface so that it atomically rejects carbon so the byproducts of the round don't adhere and end up clogging up and dirtying the weapon? So those are some of the things that we'll do research on. And then beyond weapons, we've seen a need in aerospace and in automotive for different coatings and different metallurgical interfaces that aren't being done. So we were already working some with aerospace. We've built parts already for hypersonic aircraft engines, and working with automotive to be able to take some of their exotic materials and apply this technology to it. So we're building an entire metallurgy, material science, and coatings group to be able to bring all of that technology not only to the weapon systems world, but then out to the aerospace, automotive, and even medical device world.
Oh, it's amazing. So, sounds like it's well thought of and well researched, but what's your manufacturing capability for this sort of thing?
We're installing a device here in October that'll allow us to do the equivalent of probably 10,000 barrels 8-hour shift.
Wow.
So we'll be able to move a lot of process through here, and then we have brought on a team in the research and development group to do trials and work with other companies so they can bring us their material, and we'll try different coatings and different methodologies to change the surface morphology, and then bring it back to them. And then we're doing expansion here to be able to bring up abilities of running that through here also.
No, it's amazing. And I tell you, if we weren't in this COVID-19 world, and maybe down the road, NDIA would love to maybe host a tour for your facility, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out here that would love to see it. I know I would love to see it.
So we're glad to do so. And one of the things that we're doing, based on my past experiences, we're building an indoor shooting range that's fully instrumented. So we've got a high-end data acquisition system and a high-speed camera so that we can measure everything that happens in a weapon and its interaction with the shooter, and then measure and document the improvements we make. I don't think it's good enough in the current world where you go out and you lay down and you shoot it and you say, this feels good and that feels good. From my past experience, I want to see the data and I want it to be reproducible. And then I can go talk to somebody about how more effective it can be for a shooter.
Great. So Rick, is there anything you wish I would have asked you? If you'd like to talk about?
As long as there's no 302 after this. No, I think one of the reasons we joined NDIA is because in my entire time in the Marine Corps, I spent a lot of time in acquisition and research and development, and I know how important our industrial base is for our military. Mm-hmm. If we can't build things not only now, but in times of need, then we have lost strategically. There's a great book out called Freedom Forge, and it talks about how in World War II, the commercial companies ramped up to become the economic engine that provided the weapon systems and transport aircraft to win the war. If that same thing happened again, we've got a lot of holes in our industrial base, in our ability to manufacture, our ability to source materials, and our ability to ramp up to build in case there is a demand or an emergency someplace. And so support of NDIA is an important thing. It's important for our national security, just like now we're one of the leaders in fossil fuel production, and its ability to give us security at home so we are less threatened and therefore less likely to actually end up in conflict. So anybody watching this, if you're not already a member of NDI, please go join, because having a strong industrial base keeps us all safer.
Thanks for that, Rick. And I know you've recently been put in a position with NDIA as well, which I just learned when I looked at your new website. And so for everyone watching out there, if you go to kgm-tech.com, they've got a brand new, exciting website to come and check them out with. But tell us your relationship with NDIA, as I found it on your website yesterday.
Thank you. There's a couple divisions within that you can go join. And I was privileged to recently be appointed in the Expeditionary Warfare Group, which, being a Marine, is close to my heart.
Makes sense.
And to the Vice Chair of the Science and Technology Group. And what that'll allow me to do is to bring our science and technology to other NDI members, and then leverage them for things they're doing in other technology aspects to bring their technology back into expeditionary warfare. You know, we all thought the whole concept of island hopping from World War II was gone away, but what we're seeing the Chinese do in the South China Sea are building unsinkable aircraft carriers on islands. And so the whole concept of expeditionary warfare is back on the table. Command of the Marine Corps is redesigning the Marine Corps to address it, and they're going to need the weapon systems and capabilities to be effective in that environment and theater. Great.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Rick. I really appreciate you sharing your story and the KGM Technology story with us. I think it's very interesting. And again, if you'd like to learn more about KGM Tech, it's kgm-tech.com. Thanks again, Rick.
Thank you, DJ.
Yep. I'd like to thanks again once to our sponsor, DHG, Dixon Hughes Goodman, one of the top 20 public accounting firms in the nation. Please check them out. Support our sponsors. They can be found at dhg.com. If you're interested in being a guest or sponsoring an NDIA Georgia Business Highlighter, please send a request. You can find, look for Josh Ovett at ndia.ga.org. You can find him under the Board of Directors page. Send him a note or look for us on LinkedIn as well. Thanks for watching, and see you next time on NDIA's Georgia's Business Highlighter. Thank you.